Okie dokie. So, welcome to the first Deep Dive Project live stream. Thought that I would go live on the kind of momentous occasion on the heels of my channel hitting 1,000+ subs. I went and looked at my analytics earlier today, and I'm actually past 2,000 people now, which is absolutely crazy. I am so excited to have everybody here. So excited to have a larger platform to share all of these really important issues on. And I'm hopeful of where all of this is going to go. So I'm going to give people a chance to kind of hop in before I just start talking. But I am planning on saving this live stream to my channel after the fact so that anybody who wants to watch it who couldn't make it can, and it's there. Because I am planning on kind of using this as an opportunity to introduce myself a little bit more than I have in the past and to share where my head is at with everything on this channel. I also want to say a quick thank you to everybody who has so generously bought me a coffee in the last month or so. I launched a Buy Me a Coffee account just as a small way to support what I'm doing. I'm drinking coffee right now. I drink a lot of coffee as I'm doing all of the research that I am doing. And I've had a number of people very generously buy me cups of coffee. And I really, really appreciate it. I spend a lot of time typing on my computer, working, getting all of these outlines and transcripts and everything put together. It's work that I am more than happy to do. I find it very, very fulfilling. But it does take a lot of time, and I drink a lot of coffee while I am doing that. So I am so appreciative of everybody who has donated to that. And if you would like to buy me a coffee, you can find a link for it over on my channel page, and then it's linked underneath most of my recent videos as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and kind of get into things a little bit. Feel free to comment in the chat box here, and I will respond to some of those questions and comments as we go along. But I wanted to talk about what my motivation was for starting the Deep Dive Project, why I am here at all, because it's kind of interesting to look back on it retrospectively now, but this sort of independent journalism thing was never something that I really saw myself doing, and it's kind of insane to find myself in this space now, and also to find a semi-receptive audience of people who are interested in hearing the information that I am sharing. And it's very exciting, but it's also a little bit nerve-wracking as well, because I feel like it's a big responsibility, and I want you to know that I don't take that lightly. But the motivation for the Deep Dive Project basically comes down to two things. The first is my love for, my advocacy for, my desire to see better human rights for all people living in the world. I believe that none of us are free until all of us are free. And if you have followed me on Instagram, which is where I spend most of my time when I'm not working on the next deep dive project here, then you probably have already picked up on that fact. I share about human rights and the importance of awareness and the importance of advocacy quite a bit. Most specifically around like human trafficking. That's an area that I am just very on fire and very passionate for. I want to continue to do more work in that space as time goes on, as I am able to, because it's crazy that we live in a world today where there are more people enslaved now than at any other point in human history. And it's heartbreaking to me that the country that I live in, the United States, is a host for that kind of stuff, and I want to see that end. So human rights is a big motivation for it, and then also I have a hunger and a desire for knowledge and to learn and to share that knowledge with others, because I truly do believe that the truth will set you free. And we live in this incredible information age now where we have the world quite literally at our fingertips, and I just feel like ignorance is not something that any of us can afford at this point in things. I feel like we need to wake up and become engaged members of society and educate ourselves and be asking the hard questions and having the hard conversations as much as we possibly can. So that kind of leads me into why I'm focusing on what I am focusing on here with the Deep Dive Project, specifically why I have been focusing on Opus Dei, which is kind of niche and kind of unique in the grand scheme of things. So my background is actually in environmental science. That is what I went to school for. I'm going to school for a master's in environmental science right now. That is what my background is. That's what I've been doing. But as it turns out, the scientific method is a really useful tool for more than just, testing hypotheses in a lab. It's a good methodology to follow if you're trying to find answers to really difficult questions. And I was raised in a conservative Catholic home, and what I think is today kind of colloquially referred to as trad Cath or traditional Catholic. And as an adult, I began to kind of deconstruct and work through everything that I believed, and I was finding support in various online communities. And growing up, I was aware of organizations like Opus Dei and the Legionaries of Christ and Regnum Christi and all these different fraternities, SSPX, and organizations that people can be in the same way that I'm sort of just generally aware of other things. It wasn't something that my family ever interacted with. I think that we went to a few events, conferences, and that kind of thing that were put on by, perhaps the Legionaries of Christ or Regnum Christi or something like that. I am sure that I interacted with people who, unbeknownst to me, were involved with Opus Dei, but it never really had a huge impact on me personally. So, as I was in these different communities, finding support, going through this deconstruction, figuring out what I believed versus what I didn't believe, figuring out what I wanted to keep for myself going forward versus what I wanted to kind of let go of, I stumbled upon people talking about Opus Dei and sharing their experiences. And that led me to ODAN, the Opus Dei Awareness Network, and Opus Libris, which is a predominantly Spanish speaking platform, but it was created for people who have left the organization. There is so much information on Opus Libris about Opus Dei. It's a wealth of information for anyone who wants to learn more and really get into the nitty gritty of what is going on with that organization, how it functions internally, versus the kind of facade that they present to the rest of the world. And finding out about Opus Libris and ODAN, reading these experiences from these people, it sent me down this rabbit hole. And I was trying to find more information because I was just very fascinated by it and kind of perturbed by the things that I was reading, by the experiences that people were saying that they had in this kind of highly controlling environment. And I could not believe that I could not find anything online, especially on YouTube, anyone talking about this. And that seemed like a shame. It seemed like a travesty. So I decided to make my first video just talking about Opus Dei very generally. And I did not expect that video to go anywhere. I made it because I was very interested in this organization. I couldn't believe what I was reading from people who had been in the organization and come out the other side, the trauma and the injury that they had been left with. It was all just, it was a lot, and I wanted to make one video talking about it, and I didn't think anything would come of it. But then people started to come out of the woodwork and started to share their experiences with me, and I guess the rest is history. And for better or for worse, I am just simply not the kind of person who can sit by and do nothing when I know that there are people who are being harmed. And especially when it's the kind of thing where nobody seems to want to engage with it seriously or advocate for the victims. And the thing that really compelled me about Opus Dei was the sheer number of people who were coming to me sharing their experiences, and the fact that by and large they had been written off by everybody, by their family members who might still be sympathetic to Opus Dei, by their former friends and acquaintances who were still involved with the organization, who could not bear to hear a bad word spoken about the organization, just by everybody in general. I realized there was a group of people in our world who felt unadvocated for and unseen, and that just is not something that I can live with. So I saw an opportunity to be the change that I wanted to see in the world, and I decided to act on that. And I think it's important. I want to make sure that I say this, and I've emphasized this continuously throughout the last 4+ years of talking about this, but I want to make sure that I emphasize it here again as well, that I'm not motivated by this personal vendetta against Opus Dei or against the Roman Catholic Church. I have very complex feelings about the Roman Catholic Church, but I'm aware of the fact that, for one thing, those experiences are my own and something that I need to work through on my own. And then also, I am very aware of the fact that there are people who have left Opus Dei who may not have also left religion entirely, and that religion still may serve as a part of like a touchstone, a safe space for them. And I don't want to detract from that. So, and there's no personal vendetta here. I'm not going after this organization, or I'm not going after the Roman Catholic Church because I feel like that's like a crusade that I need to take on. Really, this comes down to the fact that there are stories that are not being told. There are people that are not being heard. And I think that that needs to change. I don't think that that kind of thing should ever be allowed to exist, regardless of whether it's happening in a religious sphere or anywhere else in our society. I just don't think that that's okay. And the situation, everything that Opus Dei is tied up in, and everything else, it could just as easily be about any organization, religious or secular. It really doesn't matter. Because again, at the end of the day, this isn't about a religion. This isn't about theological dogma or anything like that. This is about the experiences of real people living here on earth who have been hurt by other real people, and the fact that that is not being addressed. So it really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me are the victims and what is, in my view, a systemic and carefully orchestrated scheme to keep the truth from the public and from the families of those involved in Opus Dei, from Catholics and from the citizens of my country, and from the citizens of numerous other nations around the world, because this is a worldwide thing. This is not just something isolated to, some small sector of the world, or like just the United States or just South America. It is quite literally worldwide. And I think that it's an unethical human rights nightmare, and I could not pretend to not know what I know and just sit idly by. That's just not the kind of person that I am. And at the time, I already had a YouTube channel, and I already had figured out how to put videos out into the ether, and I just felt like that was something that I needed to do, and something that I could do, because again, when you know better, you do better. And I firmly believe that we should try at all times to be the change that we want to see in the world. So that is what I have been doing. And that conviction that I have continues to grow as I engage with these issues, and I learn more, and I branch out into other connected areas. Because, as I'm sure you have learned if you've watched more than one of my videos, this whole thing about this organization is tied into so many other aspects of the world that we live in, so many other organizations and individuals. It's not just one small isolated little thing. When you actually start to dig into it, it kind of all comes tumbling out on top of you. And there's a lot there. So that's kind of the background and the history on why I am here and why I started talking about Opus Dei in the first place. I would like to talk about what's going to be coming next for the deep dive project, and but I'm going to read through some comments real quick before I do that. Somebody asked, "Are you on X?" No, I am not on X. I actually had a conversation with somebody on Instagram today. They were telling me that I should get on X, Twitter, because that is where they're sharing a lot of resources and information, news articles, and that kind of thing. And I do understand that. I've kind of avoided X, formerly Twitter, like the plague, for a really long time. I used it back in high school, I think, very briefly. And I don't know, it just never really resonated with me. I've always kind of been more of an Instagram girly. That's kind of where I've been more comfortable. And in more recent years, I've also gotten into Reddit quite a bit as well. And I like Reddit a lot. I like it for the anonymity aspect. I think it's a really useful tool in that regard. And then there is a pretty free exchange of information on that site. I mean, obviously, you have to do your due diligence and double check everything that you're getting and make sure that, the information that you're receiving is accurate, because, again, everyone has a bias. But in general, Instagram and Reddit are kind of the two places, and YouTube are the places where I have spent the most time. And I don't know, maybe I should get on X. I don't know. I don't know if I want to open that Pandora's box. Somebody said, I have been watching this unfold for 40 plus years. Thank you for helping bring awareness to light. I hope we are not too late. Vote, folks, like your life depends on it. Yeah, it's important. I've kind of seen this thing online kind of being spread around where it's like voting doesn't matter. And this is specific to the United States, but people in the United States saying that like your vote doesn't matter, voting doesn't matter. And I don't know, I'm kind of two minds on it. I think that if you become convinced that something doesn't matter and that it's not making a difference, then it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. But then at the same time, just knowing what I know, having done the research that I've done, it is kind of hard to believe in some of these democratic processes that we have in our country, because at a certain point, it kind of does start to feel like it's all controlled opposition. And I don't really know what to do about that. But I think that it's important to be an active participant in our society. I think it's important to be informed. And I don't think that voting is just like a waste of time. I do think that it has value. I do think that it matters. And if that is something that you care about as well, then I definitely advocate for you to go and vote in not just presidential elections, but vote for your state representatives and everything. Like voting and being an active participant in the democratic process that we have in this country, I do think that it matters. I think that it, in the end, it does send a message. So yeah, I don't know, I'm of two minds of that. I don't know how to feel about it. It's the political landscape in our country. I feel like it's changing really, really rapidly, and I don't know 100% where I land on it. And again, that's kind of a reason why I've avoided talking about politics here up until now. It's kind of come up. It's bound to come up at some point, just because of the kinds of things that people who are connected to Opus Dei are also connected to. Like it's a whole big ball of yarn, and everything is connected when you really start to dig into it all. So it's obviously come up, but being like a political commentator or something like that is not really something that I am interested in doing. The video that I made about Project 2025 is the first time I have ever kind of gone that deeply into politics on this channel. And the only reason that I did that was because of the connections that Project 2025 has to Opus Dei through people like Leonard Leo and through organizations like the Heritage Foundation and, of course, the Federalist Society and the Napa Institute and all of these different things. And like I had said, in that video, I started putting all of this information together and researching all of this stuff back like 4 years ago, after I made contact with that mayor in California and kind of became aware of the fact that there was something really odd going on there. But I got to a point where I didn't know where to go with it because I didn't know about Project 2025. And that kind of reminds me of everything that happened with Tissier v. Opus Dei, which is a French court case that happened back in 2016 that is really significant from the perspective of holding Opus Dei responsible for things like labor trafficking and not fairly compensating people for their labor and everything else. And again, I had never known about that case. One, because I didn't speak French, but then two, because I didn't know the right questions to ask to find that information. And it's the same thing with Project 2025. I didn't know about it because I didn't know what questions to ask. And then all of a sudden, Project 2025 is like in the mainstream conversation quite a bit more. And I start looking at it and, oh my gosh, wouldn't you know it, it's connected to all of these different people that I have been researching for quite some time. And it was like, everything's kind of connecting. These dots and this picture is forming. And I think one of the biggest things that kind of blew my mind was one of the websites. I think it's defeatthecoup2025.org or something like that. I cited it in my references list on that video. They had like a web chart thing up on their website that showed how Leonard Leo and Opus Dei were connected to this whole thing. And it kind of blew my mind because I will pull this up right now. I never ended up doing anything with this, but at one point, because there was so much that I was trying to piece together from all of this tangled web with the Napa Institute and Timothy Bush and the Heritage Foundation and blah, 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 I kind of did something similar. And I drew up basically it's like a very small piece of that bigger thing that defeatthecoup2025.org had up. And that was like, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. because I was seeing all of the same names that I had been researching on this graph, and it kind of tied everything together. So that's why I talked about it. Ordinarily, I don't think I would have talked about that, not because it isn't important, but because, again, I have really no desire to be a political commentator. Not that I don't think politics matter, but we live in such a hyper politicized world. There are already so many people talking about it, and I feel very comfortable leaving that conversation kind of up to them, and chiming in when I feel like I need to. And I feel like I needed to for this thing. So let's see. Somebody said, I hope you realize the power of the people you are trying to expose. This group has been on my radar for the last 10 years. It will destroy your life when you get on theirs. I commend your bravery. Yeah, I definitely realize the fact that there's a lot of money and a lot of influence here. There it's a really wild web of people, and the historical context that ties everything in is pretty significant too. I mean, it goes back further than just 10 years. It goes back, to the 70s or 80s, probably even before then. And it's been sort of this kind of slow march towards something. And I guess we could say that it's, Project 2025, or it's the agenda that project espouses, or whatever. It's kind of been this slow march towards that. That is interesting. I am cognizant of the fact that everything that I say is being put onto the internet, and that I'm responsible for the words that are coming out of my mouth. That's why I always stress that this is just my opinion. This is just my perspective. This is just me sharing my thoughts, which have been informed by my references, which I always cite. I'm very aware of all of that because I don't want to get myself into trouble legally. But at least for the time being, we are still able to engage relatively freely on platforms like YouTube and Reddit and Instagram. We're still allowed to share our thoughts and our perspective. So I am happy about that. I am thankful for that. I don't feel afraid. Maybe I should feel afraid, but I don't know. I don't feel like fear is a very useful emotion. I think it can kind of cloud your judgment sometimes. So I kind of try to avoid falling into a fearful mindset, just because I don't think that it's very helpful. But I appreciate the support and I appreciate the sentiment. So I'm only planning on being live for about 30 minutes. So I need to get on with the rest of what I was going to say, but I'll check comments again here in a minute. So what is next for the deep dive project? Now that I've kind of, I don't know, that video about Project 2025 felt like my magnum opus of 2024. That is my big major contribution to society for the year. So what is next? I am going to continue to pull threads and do research. I have a couple of big projects that I am working on right now. One that's very close to being finished. It's actually the video that I was going to do before I found out about Project 2025 and kind of put everything on the back burner to address that. But learning about the sort of twisted bureaucratic world of Opus Dei has introduced me to other organizations and individuals that I believe deserve a spotlight. And so that's the plan. A few that are on my radar right now are the Legion of Christ / Regnum Christi organization and the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta have come up a lot throughout my research. I've consistently, as I've been reading and researching things, they've consistently come up sort of in the same realm as Opus Dei, involved in some of the same sort of things. And I don't really know anything about them. So I am going to be digging into that at some point. And there are others as well. And one of the things that I really love about what I am doing here, and I think why I feel motivated and bolstered by it, is that I feel that through the research that I am doing, that I am gaining a more nuanced and kind of complete picture of the world and the various forces, for lack of a better word, some that may be unbeknownst to us, that have an outsized impact on the world that we live in. And my hope is that by sharing what I learn here, that everyone is learning something too. My main goal is to get people interested and encourage people to do their own research. Don't treat me as your one-stop shop for information. That's not what I want. I want to be a stepping stone for you taking the information that I have and researching it yourself, asking questions. Because again, we live in this information age. There is all this information. Yes, it can be difficult sometimes to know the right questions to ask or which direction to kind of turn your attention in, which is why I think that content like what I am trying to do can be really valuable. But that's not intended to be like the end of the conversation. I want people to get curious, and I want people to be educating themselves and asking questions and becoming smarter, more engaged citizens and members of society. That is my end goal. Let's see. Somebody said, we are in a global awakening. This is an evolution of human consciousness. Opus Dei, Project 2025, etc. These are the pokers. Humanity is the fire. Our job is to respond and blaze brightly to rise. Very well said. I agree. I don't think that, you shouldn't take any of this stuff that's happening politically in the United States or globally and become fearful. I think that we are going through a lot of change right now, societally, globally. There's a lot happening, and it's an interesting time to be alive, to say the least. But there is something really interesting that is happening, and I don't know ultimately where all of this is going to lead, but I'm going to try to be as informed as I can while everything is happening and not give in to fear or anything like that, but just to be educated and be aware. I think that there is real value in that. One thing that I want to make sure that I stress is that, again, like I said, I'm not intended to be your one-stop shop. I'm not CNN. I'm not MSNBC. I'm not Fox News. I don't claim to be. I am learning, and I'm not perfect. And that means that I'm going to sometimes get things mispronounced. I'm not going to get someone's name down perfectly. If you go back and watch like earlier videos that I made, I pronounced Jose Maria Escriva's name slightly differently than I pronounce it now. And that has evolved from talking to people, becoming more educated, listening to other people talk about Escriva and everything that he has done in his organization. I've become more well-versed, more aware, better educated. And that is something that is continuing to be true. I don't claim to have everything figured out. I don't claim to be, I don't know. I'm not trying to be like another news media source. I am quite literally learning as I go along, and I'm sharing what I'm learning here. So it's kind of, you're on the cutting edge of me educating myself and trying to educate other people. So I appreciate the flexibility. I appreciate the understanding. I also appreciate when people point out that, I didn't get something 100% correct. I mean, that's how we learn, and I don't mind, but it's going to happen. It is what it is. And also, I also want to point out that I'm not above my own biases. I do have biases. We all have biases. I think anybody who says that they are unbiased or don't have a bias at all, they're being really disingenuous and really, really dishonest. And I think you should very heavily question what it is that they're trying to convince you of and why they would be trying to convince you that they don't have a bias, because it's evident everywhere. So, yeah, but hopefully by sharing what I learn and what I have learned, where I've learned it from, people will be encouraged to ask their own questions and to search and read. And even when, or especially when the questions make you uncomfortable or angry, I think that is a really good indication that you're onto something big. If a question or a statement or something like that makes you feel angry or very, very disturbed on like a visceral level, that's something that you should probably look into and examine a little bit more closely. And I think I made a lot of people uncomfortable. I've been consistently making people uncomfortable with the content that I have been making here. And while it is not my desire to destabilize anyone, I do think that anytime you can make someone stop and think, that's a really, really good thing. So hopefully I'm accomplishing that. Let's see. Are you including extreme working conditions in your definition of slavery? Yes. So labor trafficking, based on what I have read, is the fastest growing sector of human trafficking. Sex trafficking gets a lot more attention from people. It gets a much more visceral reaction out of people. It's sensationalized a whole lot more. But the fact of the matter is, labor trafficking is a much bigger deal and is much more rampant than people would ever realize. And labor trafficking doesn't mean you kidnap somebody off of the street and then you force them to, I don't know, make shirts all day long in a sweatshop for, pennies on the dollar. I mean, that definitely does happen, but it can also be a lot more insidious than that. It can be a lot harder to identify. There are some wonderful resources out there for getting educated on the different types of human trafficking and what it looks like. So I highly recommend just do some quick Googling. I don't have anything to share in this live stream, but just spend 5 to 10 minutes Googling and you will find some really good resources from some credible NGOs that are working really, really hard to tackle this issue head on. And yeah, it's something that I think more people need to be aware of. Somebody said, hi, how long does it take to make each video, including the research beforehand? It really depends. It depends on what I am talking about and how hard I have to look for information on it. I mean, I guess, and it depends on what you consider like work, because I break everything up to keep it as like easy as possible. I try not to just focus on this thing 24/7. I try to take breaks, get out, touch grass, get some fresh air, because it is a really heavy topic to deal with. Anytime I'm talking about Opus Dei, there's a really good chance that there's going to be some really sad stuff tied up in there, and that can definitely take a toll on you in the long run. So it depends. For my last video, I mean, I guess you could say I was working on that for 3.5 years, but in reality, it was probably more like a year if you were to condense everything down. Just I would go back in and I would chip away at it anytime that I could, and I would look for more information. By the time that I found out about Project 2025, that outline was sitting at, I want to say, 11 or 12 pages, but by the time I was done with adding everything in, it had exploded to, I want to say, like 30 pages. And my next transcript is also quite long. It's around 30, 31 pages right now. I don't think it's going to get any longer, but it's a lot of writing. And again, how long it takes really just depends on how long it takes me to find the information that I'm looking for. Sometimes it's really, really easy. And sometimes it's a lot harder, especially because I try to be careful with the sources that I use, to use sources that are credible. And that gets really kind of tricky because when you're talking about some of these less talked about topics, like some of Opus Dei's connections to certain governmental political things, it can start to stray into the territory of conspiracy theories. And not that the stuff that Opus Dei is doing is a conspiracy theory, but it tends to kind of fall into that same category, which means that it lives on the websites of people who are heavily invested in a lot of conspiracy theories. And while it's perfectly fine to be interested in conspiracy theories and to engage with that kind of thing, sometimes those are not the most credible sources that you want to use. So that can also add another layer to it. And that's one reason why I'm so appreciative of people who take the time to send me tips and send me information and just talk with me. I really, really appreciate it, because again, you don't know the right questions to ask if you don't know. Like you just don't know what you don't know. And it can make that whole process a lot easier. I've really, really enjoyed one of the coolest things about the Deep Dive project and everything that it has brought in has just been the opportunity to talk to people from other parts of the world. I just think it's really, really interesting. And there is, I mean, you can read news articles until you're blue in the face, but there is truly no substitute for talking to a real live human being who is living in the country or region that you are doing research in, who is living with the conditions that you are interested in trying to research and wrap your head around. Like, there is just no better substitute. And I am so appreciative of all of the people who have trusted me enough to share their experiences and be very vulnerable, genuinely very, very vulnerable with me, and tell me intimate details of the things that they have been through. I mean, I am incredibly humbled every single time I talk to someone and they share that stuff with me. I don't take it for granted. I don't take it lightly. It's an incredible it's an incredible gift. I see it as a gift, honestly, from these people. So yeah. Let's see. Somebody said, "My whole life I've longed for a better world. As bad as this all seems, it's reaching people. For the first time ever, I see that the better world is possible because of those bad things being seen." Yes, a million times yes. I have always believed that, the truth will set you free, truly. The truth will set you free. And even if that means that in finding the truth and accepting it, facing it head on, that means that your paradigm becomes completely shattered in the process. I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing. It's sad, but I would prefer a harsh, ugly reality to a pretty lie, because I would much rather live with reality. I would much rather contend with real concrete things than to kind of live in this sort of fantasy land where everything's hunky dory all the time. Somebody said, "I'd like to invite you onto my show." Yeah, if you are interested in speaking with me one on one, if you are interested in sending me information or anything like that, I can put my email. I'll put my email here in the chat, but it's also pinned everywhere, and it's on my channel page and everything. So by all means, do send me an email. Also, like my DMs and everything on Instagram are open as well, so you can reach me there. Let me add this into the chat really quick, just so that everybody can see it. Yeah, so if you want to send me information, you want to reach me, you want to talk to me, the deep dive project at protonmail.com is the best way to reach me. You can also just send me a DM on Instagram at the deep dive project official. That is where I spend my time. But yeah, that I think this is where I'm going to leave it for now. I was planning on going live for 30, and we've been here for 35 minutes. Does anybody have anything else they want to throw in the chat? Somebody said, "I found your channel seeking confirmation bias. Stayed for subscribe for the well-researched information. As a geezer who has been alienating friends and family over the growing shadow of theocracy." I understand. I understand. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Those of you who tuned in, commented, I really appreciate it. I will save this live stream on my channel so that you can come back to it if you ever want to. And for those of you who did not make it today, then you can also do that as well. I really appreciate all of the support. I know I keep saying that. I know everybody says that. Every YouTuber's like, "Thank you for the support. It means so much." But truly, like, there are no words. There truly are no words to express how appreciative I am of each and every person who takes the time to watch my videos and engage with my content and leave thoughtful responses. Even if you don't agree with me, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. That's okay. You're entitled to your own opinion. You're entitled to your own perspective. Your experiences and perspective of the world are valid and have value. And I'm not trying to make converts over here of anything. I'm just trying to get people curious, engaged, interested in asking questions. So thank you so much for being a part of that. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again sometime, maybe for the next milestone, whenever that is. So thank you, everybody. Stay blessed. Have a great rest of your day. And remember, nolite te bastardes corporadorum. Don't let the bastards drag you down.